humanity. And a long time ago, not so very long, was the printed information that allowed us to share information on a large scale. And recently, we have added to that the electronic information. And I'm saying recently because if you look over the centuries, this is all very new stuff. And presently, we're confronted with data that lives eternal, and yet the information is very flighty. It's very hard to keep focus on what's really going on. That leads to, you know, a little comical situation where we sometimes talk about the fish are not aware of their water. Similar, we are not aware of the air that we breathe or the data that surrounds us. And even though data seems to be everywhere, information not necessarily so. So we would like to dig into that a little. Like this cartoon says, we're talking about data products, data engineering, dashboards, but in the end, we really do not need data. We need information. That's a crucial difference. And people tend to say, you know, oh, just give me the data and I'll find what I'm looking for. But what they're really looking for is the information that they're seeking. And information is rather elusive in a way because we don't really know how to organize that. We know how to structure data, for databases, for software, but information itself is sometimes hard to grasp and store and manage. And in the same line of that, how does that work thinking about data? And I recently gave this presentation for a retiring teacher, a professor, and he spent some 30 years trying to educate the new professionals on how to think when you're dealing with information. And there can never be enough learning in that respect. And René Descartes said it beautifully. He said, "I doubt, therefore I am," which people took as "I think, therefore I am." But the interesting part is where initially he said, "I doubt." And that is really what this is about. And a couple of days ago, I was reading an article about how AI does not really do anything, and it certainly doesn't doubt. So, so one of the ways to find answers is, and I'm taking a slight detour here in the Dutch legal system, is where everything that is affecting us as citizens is written down in legal articles. You can browse that online and download XML files and parse through all the legal articles. Basically, those definitions in law are there to let the citizens of the country know what they're up against when something happens. So regulations, so on a government level, but of course procedures and regulations also happen at a enterprise level, company level. And what you usually find is that there is a lot of jargon in there, and a lot of concepts that are being named. And despite the chapters on education and schooling are over 1,000 articles, the word student has a very limited definition. The student is the one that actually goes to school. So that's pretty short. And the dilemma with those kind of things is that even though you can find it in chapter 1, and there's in the definitions part, and there is an article that mentions that, the real question is, where is the data? And then you discover that every school, every university administers their data about students in their own fashion. Vendor dependent, business need dependent, very contextual. And the only way to translate legal articles and regulations and requirements into something called data is to go through the process of trying to understand what it all means. And this ties back with the doubt, because if I would build a system for a university professor, I am still being taught by the professor. I don't know what he knows. So the doubt is constantly there, and it's a driver to get to know the data need, not the data structure, but the need for data. And that we have to communicate in natural language, not in any technical diagrams. So what happens there is that through human communication and then formalizing that communication into a formal language, we can then start modeling the information in the shape of what I call facts. And with that, and I'm going to demo that, we can transform that in all kinds of artifacts so that we can actually build IT solutions that support the communication in the working environment. So let's just look at some of the example data. And to be fair, I just made this up because I have to make it an example case that is limited in size. And I'll get back to that on how that works in a large scale. So for students, we have some apprenticeships, because if they go to a certain school, they also have to do some apprenticeships or internships, and they have codes in the description and a city where this project takes place. I have registration forms that students can fill in, and they can have their preference known for certain apprenticeships. And in that process somewhere, these apprenticeships are then assigned to certain students. Now, this is kind of the data or the use case that we're going to work with, that I can demo in a very short amount of time. And I'm sure you'll have all kinds of technical questions, so please just save them for after demo, and I can dive back into the case. For those who might think, oh, I can see where AI might support that. Unfortunately, there is some AI integration, and I will demo that. But even now, by the mere fact that I am doing the demo and not some AI, means that you know, whatever tools we use, the tool still needs the humans to do the work. So I don't think we will ever be out of work in that respect. We might have a changed job or execute the job slightly different, but any mechanization, automation will just change the character of it, change the society, but we will still be required to be there. So let's see if I can share a different screen. I have to stop this one first. Let's say stop that one and then share a different screen. I have, yes, there we go. I have an application open. This is basically, I just started the application. I'm going to start a new project for demo purposes. The screen is divided in various panels that you might recognize from other tooling. And I am going to start by setting it up a little. I have a project panel with some files. I have those files open. And I have on the left my vocabulary, where nothing is in it just yet. And as we took the examples data that I had, I'm going to start with a few expressions that we can work with. For instance, the fact statement, Marco Wobben lives in Utrecht, which is an instance of a city of residence. I'm just going to press qualify, and I'll talk you guys through it. So this is a statement with concrete examples done by our domain expert that says, well, we have students and they live in a certain city. So, and when we talk about these facts, we're really talking about examples for the city of residence. And I'm going to select part of that text, and I'm going to name that this is how we talk about our student in this case. I'm going to apply that. And it starts on the right with a small preview that it shows that the city of residence has a little bit of a structure and it points to the student. And on the other end, I do have my city. I'm going to type that in and say apply. So now we can see that the city of residence really has two components, the student and the city in this case. So on this part, I'm done with this level of qualification. I can move down to the student and mark Marco as the first name of the student and Wobben as my surname. And there's nothing really else to work with. And you can now see that the nested structure is represented in a little diagram. I will complete this. About Marco, that is really just a value. I don't have to do anything else with it. There's no hidden information or structure in there. The same with the surname. And you might initially think, oh, Utrecht, yes, that is the city. But really, when I say it like that, it's not really the city. It is the name of a city. So I'm just going to qualify this again as city name, because I cannot store cities in a database. I have to store city names in databases. It's a oh, I pushed the
So
wrong
Marco,
button.
shouldn't that be a student name that you had as Marco Wobben? Or I mean, so you did that as a city, but not as
I
the
could have
Marco Wobben.
I could have done that. And of course, in any demo, anything goes wrong. I'm just going to quickly cancel this and do it again, because
Okay.
a button remains disabled for some reason. So I'm just going to type a little faster. I'm going to do all of this by keyboard. And this was the city. So this is where I left off. So on the question, shouldn't it be student first name and student surname? That could be the case, and it would be helpful if you have different information that also has first name and surname. But the mere fact that we're using a first name and surname within the context of the student, it already implies that that is the first name
Okay.
of the student. But if it leads to name clashes, because I'm also modeling customer first name, surname, then that might be something to look into.
Okay.
So what you see now is on the left, after having classified different parts, I have some sort of vocabulary. I have my city of residence that says student lives in city. If I extend that, it says first name, surname, lives in city name. That's on the label type level. And I actually have the instance. And I can look back at this structure by simply double clicking it, and you can see how that grammar is built into the information model. Now, to visualize that, I can drag all of that into my diagram area. I don't actually draw pictures as you would do in other tools, but I'm actually information modeling fact expressions, and I'm visualizing what the structure of that is. And in the same is, I can then look at, for instance, a UML class diagram that would be derived out of that, and it would give me a picture like this. It has student with first name and surname. It has city with the city name. And I have something in the middle called city of residence, in which city and student are combined. A small adjustment here is also the semantics and the examples that are used to communicate with domain experts is actually pushed forward into the UML class diagram, so that at any point of time, a technical diagram like this can still be read and validated and verified by stakeholders. Now, as you may see that it has a one-to-many and a one-to-many, so this is basically a linking table between those two entities. That is usually not the case. So what we're going to do is say, okay, wait a minute. I know I have students and I have cities, but every student can only occur once in a city of residence, which means that every student lives only in one city. As soon as I mark that, you will see if I switch back to the UML that it will update that with that new information. And it will put the city of residence as an attribute in the student entity. And we can continue that. We can also look at it from a logical model, and I have to turn on another feature so that it will start updating the relational diagram too. Interestingly enough, where in UML a city has its own class, in a normalized database structure, there are really no facts that talk about city. I only speak of city within the context of the city of residence, which is identified by students. So that leads us to the student table, where the first name and surname are the key, and the city name is basically where this person lives. So normalization is a slightly different process than the software building with UML class diagrams. Let's see if I can switch this around, because then I'd have it side by side. Might make it a little bit more interesting. Let's take another fact expression. Let's move this around a little. That way I can add some more information here. And I think we're doing okay on time. Let's see. There are apprenticeships. So for instance, there is an apprenticeship S101, which takes place in New York. I'm going to qualify the fact expressions. I'm going to select this as being the apprenticeship. Then this again is my city. I'm going down one level. Now I have to tell Kstock in this case that the S101 is my apprenticeship code. I do complete. This is now just become a simple value, and then it kicks in because now it matches up with the other parts of verbalization that says, wait a minute, there is something called city, and that is simply holding the city name, and I can simply do match. And what it now does is it extended the vocabulary with a few new terms. And I'll drag and drop that into my diagram. It's connected to city, and it is connected to my apprenticeship. And again, if we look at the UML and we wait a second to have it updated, I need a little bit more space here. You can see that we have apprenticeship as a class that again has a many-to-many relationship to city. So here we do recognize that each apprenticeship can only occur once in the population of apprenticeship cities. So we put a constraint on that one. Place it there. Oh, stay away. And now you see that the apprenticeship has a city as an attribute. And I have to put the apprenticeship code in there. And again, the relational diagram shows as such. Now, the relational diagram is a little bit more interesting because it now shows two tables to store all the information. And we still do not have any fact about city itself. So what it renders into is that city just becomes part of the structure for city of residence into student, and becomes part of the structure in apprenticeship city for apprenticeship. And since I don't verbalize any fact statements about cities, it doesn't really have any way to communicate about it except through statements here and here. Now, this is a little quirky to some because I have this introduced, but it doesn't really resolve in a table. So one might think that it might be a reference table with all city names, but then I would have to state that New York is a city. And then I can start communicating about all the city names. At this point, it shows in the logical diagram that it has the student table and it has the apprenticeship table. And what it can do is build a database view with all city names based on the two student and apprenticeship tables. So it doesn't really store it, and there's no way to store cities except through these two facts. I'm going to continue the work here. Students can have an apprenticeship. Let's see. Let's take the apprenticeship.
Sorry, Marco, can I ask a
Yes.
quick question?
Yes, of course.
So we seem to have lost that semantic of city of reference and apprenticeship city, where in apprenticeship, in the normalized logical view, we just have city name. We don't really understand what it represents, that it's a residence or an apprentice. So that's a little bit confusing to me, that we should that not be, instead of city name, not be city of residence or city name or resident
Right.
city name or.
I think we can arrange that by saying, turning on this option here. Give it a second.
Oh, there. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
It's
Wow.
one of the many naming conventions for columns in database tables.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, this is more clear. Let's put it this way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, I agree. But again, you can. There's a ton of features
Yeah.
that allow you to play with all of that. Especially when the information structures become deeper and more nested, those settings really begin to play a role.
Right.
For now, because of the cases being so small, there are very little name clashes and whatsoever. So it's not much of an issue. And even if a name clash would occur, the tool would still try to resolve it in a way that makes it more semantically rich so that you can still recognize the difference. For instance, if I would have added the student's city of birth to it, then it would have had city twice, and then it would have introduced by itself the distinction between city of residence and city of birth.
Okay.
And still, the semantics are really down here. So reading the column names is one thing, but actually reading the verbiage on how business communicates about the data in there is the real mechanism to verify all of this.
So just what was confusing me when you say normalized model, I mean that fact only belongs to the key of the student. So it makes sense now when I use city of residence, because it's related to the student, whereas city name is not really related to.
Right. Yeah, it's the naming convention there.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on. Let's see if we can add another one. Students might have multiple preferences. Peter Johnson in this case, again, the student or one of the students, I'm doing preferences order or number. Let's see, let's do it like that. And then we have our apprenticeship. Now you see me work through that very easy with the keyboard. I'm just pressing enter. I use shift cursors and stuff can be really fast. Now it did this, and now it starts with the second expression. It says, wait a minute, that kind of looks the same. So it tries to do pattern matching. And it's just, of course, it matches. And the number is actually still a number, so that matches too. And once I've done that, it will come back for a third, because I add 3 fact statements. And I click match, match, and finish. And here we go. I have one more apprenticeship preference to add. Let's move things out of the way a little. Here. So in UML, if it updates, let's double click on this tab. So all my diagrams get maximum space. You can see the apprenticeship preference. There is one attribute still missing here, so I can do show related, and I have the preference number. Now I have all the roles here visual, and then it starts adding it visually here. The only thing that we don't know yet is where are the keys? Now UML itself doesn't really recognize any keys. It just says this is mandatory and this is optional and this is a one-to-many, and it doesn't really support keys. So in case that we tweaked it a little so that we can at least figure out how to identify stuff when it comes to using UML as a representation for data. And as soon as I add some constraints, it will visualize that little key, the orange key, to show you what is actually used as identification when it comes to handling data. Another interesting part is the apprenticeship preferences, because it's clearly not a simple key. We have different constraints, and for that we're going to use our wizard that will help us verbalize, based on semantics and examples, what we need to figure out. I'm going to go through a few steps, and first of all it starts asking me questions about if I have Peter Johnson as preference number 1 for apprenticeship S101, could he have at the same time preference number 1 for something else? Now, obviously, that is not proper because he needs to have unique apprenticeship preferences for each ordinal number. So that cannot happen. And it repeats and goes through a couple of questions. It says, okay, but can it have as a second preference option the same apprenticeship? That's really not how the system is intended. It has to come up with 3 alternatives so that the planner can actually make a choice. So again, this cannot occur simultaneously. And now it's talking about different students who can both have S101 as their first choice. So that is valid. And what it goes through is actually, it tries to figure out which combinations cannot happen. It tries to find the negative. Peter Johnson first and second, this is all valid. A different person, that's all fine too. Another, that can still happen, and then it's kind of finished with that. And what it now does, it has different uniqueness constraints on it. And one of them might be the key or the other. And it should start reflecting that. Let me just trigger an update to make sure that the UML diagram gets into sync. And I'll get back to that. My city, I can classify that. This is an interesting part. I can classify it as a location. And it will add a little icon to it to indicate that cities are locations. And once the UML is updated, you will see that the city has that icon as well.
Wow.
And the apprenticeship preferences is being adjusted. Even this one might be updated. I think it's kind of worked up. Yep. You can now see that it has a bunch of mandatory attributes, but the student first name, student surname, and the apprenticeship is now leading for the key to identify apprenticeship preferences. And there should be an alternate key and foreign keys. All of that is just generated out of the box. There's more to that. There's apprenticeship itself, has the code, the city. I can have another attribute. Let's see. If I split, just give my real estate back, give that back. For those who are familiar with data vaults, I can use a different color scheme. And there you will recognize the blue for the hubs, the business with the business keys, the green for the links that are in between the hubs, and then very a small space here is that there is a satellite with the preference number. And if I can add another expression there about apprenticeship, let's see, let's do the apprenticeship description. Just going to quickly run through that. Again, this is my apprenticeship, and this is my description. Complete, it matches, and all good. You will see that it adds that as a satellite colored fact type. And of course, I'm adding another constraint on it because each apprenticeship can only occur once in the population of apprenticeship codes with their type descriptions. So you can see that truly understanding the way that the business communicates in using fact expressions is very, very insightful because that builds the backbone of the structure. And then the constraints added to it, what is unique, what is mandatory, basically saying, it can only be this and not something else. It drives the data structure both in database structures as in UML software classes. Now, it doesn't stop there because there's a ton of generators behind it. And I'll list a few as they are listed in the book. One of the things is that I wanted to show you is, okay, what if this is really integrating some of the ChatGPT stuff? And I can have all the details that are listed with the student, augmented it with ChatGPT, and you will notice that it will fill in. Sometimes it starts hallucinating the wrong way, of course. You try it 10 times and it works, and on the 11th, it's kind of messing up again. Even getting something simple as please reply in a JSON structure, it manages to mess up. But helpful is that it has now student, it has students, it comes with various aliases, it comes with an abbreviation, and it even tries to answer what is student, and provides a definition. A person who is enrolled in an educational institution and is studying towards a degree or qualification. All very cool stuff. Examples, it tries to make up some more based on a little bit of context that is given. And also, and this is where the hallucination becomes really helpful, it also poses a few questions to help us interview the domain experts and the stakeholders. Because if it then can make up, do it in forms of questions and not in fact in forms of statements. And obviously this is a mix-up, so I'll just remove that. There's some like that. Okay, cool. And I can even bring that into my diagram by stating, I want to see the definition by ChatGPT, pull that in, and I get even more meaning into my diagrams. And it should refresh that. Sometimes I have to kick it a little. So it brings back the annotations that I visualized for the audience that reads these kind of diagrams.
And I see it doesn't have the key on apprenticeship preference. Am I missing something?
I think you're missing the same thing as I am.
Okay.
Not quite sure. Maybe if I edit the constraints, maybe I should tell it which I would like to have the preference. Probably this one as preferred key.
Okay.
Maybe that helps. I mean, there's so much to be tweaked in all of these.
Yeah.
It might actually drive and trigger. See there, now it goes. Now you
Now,
can see.
wouldn't that, if you make the preference number the key, wouldn't that change the satellite and the link that it
Yeah.
should not be green, green, yellow?
It should definitely, yes.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, very good. And I'm working with a client that does data vault builder integration, and
Mm,
to push this straight into the tool, and we're working on these kind of little tweaks.
okay.
Very good, good observation. So let's move on. It's because Howard is gone in 15 minutes. So in an international crowd, just modeling in your native language is cute, but as we have here in the Netherlands, it's like we're having regulations for the Netherlands, but then we're having an international company that also has to comply with EU regulation, etc., etc. So one of the things that we added is being able to translate. If I use the DeepL translation services, because I'm lazy, I want oh, I want to type everything in Spanish, and it added to my vocabulary all the Spanish words. So we don't see it here just yet, but up here I can now switch my diagram to Spanish.
Wow.
And this is cute because if I have a Spanish developer, I can also send him a Spanish UML class diagram.
Mm,
Now again, if you have a keen eye, you will now see that all the semantics has gone. It's only doing it on types.
yeah.
So one of the things that we need to provide is Spanish language. So the fact statements here lives in city. I can translate that with the same service. Say, okay, I said Spanish for that one as well. Click OK. And now you can see that it added the
Mm,
Spanish fact expression. And my UML class diagram will be extended with Spanish. An interesting part here is that it moves on and on. It's just, I'm just going to show you another cool feature. I have an example population for cities. Oh, that's not helpful. It's doing it in Spanish. Let's go back to English so that we can read it. I have examples that I entered through fact statements, but I would really like to pull a few more cities without having to type them. So one of the things that we can do is go to our built-in data explorer. It has a bunch of ODBC, JDBC, API connections. I'm going to go to the horrible Northwind database.
mm.
And in there, there's customer data. And I'm specifically interested in just the city. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open my mapping, and you can see here, this is all the information that I have in my information model. I can simply drag it into the city and onto city name. What happens now is that whenever I want to navigate something with city, it now can pull the data from a live connection here. And I'll demonstrate by going here, go back to the population. And I'm going to pull it from live data, which is using that connection. And I want to add, Berlin. Import that one, and it added Berlin to my example population. And I may have set the diagram style a little bit too limited. Add another row here. Let's see, save that. Make sure that I don't make, oh, it's the data vault. That's why. Okay, that has few examples. Let's switch to this one. You can see that even the diagram settings can be tweaked in a million ways. That it added Berlin from our production environment as another example.
And sorry, Marco, would you recommend or suggest that we could link to international reference tables to be able to connect this,
Yeah,
like the ISO city code or the
yeah,
country codes or whatever
yeah,
that.
yeah. So even this, um, you can import, even if you don't have access to a live production environment because of security reasons, you can still provide an extraction of that data through Excel worksheets. And what you see here is basically the data coming from Excel sheets.
Right, right.
That is no problem to embed as well. And when it comes to other metadata, I mean, and again, it's live metadata, but you can also provide JSON files that give you offline metadata. And you can actually use that. For instance, if I drag the customer ID into my vocabulary,
Oh,
it does a few things. For instance, it maps it.
DBO.
It says here, I have DBO customer,
Mm.
and it links to my production environment, and I can now drag that into my diagram and add that to my information structure.
Okay.
So I can even pull in the technical structures. And as I shown earlier between the translation of English and Spanish, I can also build my own dictionaries, which might be technical in nature. So I can use the same information structure for business terminology as add the technical namings for that, and it will pick up on those technical names if you want to use that for artifact generation.
Mm.
So that's a lot of stuff. Of course, people are interested in temporal. So let's say that we want to be able to track all the cities that a student has lived. I could basically add all kinds of timelines here. Let's do transaction time for this example. And if I would go back to the UML diagram, it should, let's see, it ends up somewhere. Oh, it only adds a little clock here because it's still an attribute at this point. If I put the temporal stuff on my student, I'm pretty sure something more dramatic will happen. And what it does in the artifact and not in the UML class diagram, in the artifact, it will add all kinds of extra temporal information. See, similar to what happens here.
Yeah.
So the advantage is that you can, with your stakeholders, you can simply communicate about one point in time. You don't have to say, okay, but wait a minute. Yeah, Marco lives in Utrecht, but he's gonna move. And last month I thought he moved, but he didn't. And that makes it convoluted so much. So we basically drilled it down or boiled it down to, okay, do you need to know when it's active? Do you want to keep history on it, or do you want to know when you decided that or when it was registered? So basically doing future, past, or both. Just a handful of timelines that you really have to know about. There's a few more things that I would like to see because we're almost running out of time. I think this is as far as I want to go with the demo. I have a few slides to finish up and answer some more questions. I have to stop sharing again. Trying to find the share button. There.
Next to the leave.
I know it. Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? Not that one. Okay, let's move on with a few slides. If I can see the slides too, that would be helpful. There you go. So even in a large scale, being able to communicate simple facts in the natural language can get you a very far way. So the biggest customers currently is the real company here in the Netherlands that uses this product also in an SAP migration. They're working on assets that is only a quarter of their total data administration, and it already has 20,000 terms in there. And everything is uniquely named, managed, tracked, tagged, versioned, and that is all done because if they would want to migrate SAP from SAP to SAP, they would only migrate the data and not the actual information. So they realize that if they want to really add business value, they have to tap into the information level, not just on a technical data level. And for your information, the Kstock product comes with a portal. It supports Power Designer, ER Studio. I think you've had Bas a while back.
Yes, Bas. Yeah,
I'm working with him to have an direct upload from KStock to his environment so you can model it and have an application running in no time. Of course, you know the famous Remco Broekmans
yeah.
with his wonderful artifacts that can be imported into KStock with a click of a button. We're working on the Data Vault Builder integration. We're providing services for the government here by supporting the legal articles and code generators from Java, Python, etc., databases, and we're integrating more and more APIs from helpful services online. So I think I've talked for almost an hour now, and I'm ready for some questions. For those who are new to this talk, all of this was documented, if you will, and described in the book that is available. And you can use the discount code TP25, and I think that will give you a surprising 20% off. That is
Fantastic.
it so far.
Marco, thank you very much. I got a question from Crystalline. Crystalline, yes.
Yeah. Hi, thank you, Marco. Excellent presentation. Just a quick question from my side. It's more of an abstract question. Before you actually start the initial modeling, okay? What's the best artifacts you should use to extrapolate your data requirements? I know your business requirements should translate into data requirements, but where's the best artifacts that should be used to actually extract these data requirements from?
Well, there's a ton of products out there that do technical cataloging. You can plug in your live environment and have access to it, and you can document it on a technical level. The only real way that you can actually tap into the knowledge of the business is to start talking with them. And there are different ways to do that. To my experience, diving straight into the fact statements is a little too heavy. What I usually do is first just kind of a free format interview to just get some of the concepts out. And I think Remco is a big fan of that. Just talk and write down all the nouns and verbs. That's just a good start. But as I've shown in other presentations, that is not accurate enough, because then you will have a map with concepts and how they connect, but you don't really have a way to verify if that's how they actually communicate about it. And that's really the essential key, because conceptually we can make models, we can draw lines and rectangles and circles. That's not the dilemma. The dilemma is, do we really understand what the business is trying to accomplish? And the only way to actually do that is to have a communication with them that digs into that. And funnily enough, I've had some new users that are doing exactly that with this product, and they start with concepts that are whatever they can find, and then they start digging into the fact expressions. And as soon as they show the initial diagramming that I started with working as well, the stakeholders are thrilled, because they recognize the terminology, they can read the semantics, and they can see the examples. So in a nutshell, that is really the golden egg, if you will, to have this loose talk about and to find some scope. And then with them or without them, but the fact statements are crucial, because as soon as you have those, it can actually be verified, because that's the hard part. Like I showed you initially with the student, yeah, cool. Now we have student and we have a definition for it, but we do not know what the data requirements are. So we need to actually be able to communicate what these people really need to register and administer to do their work. I hope that was kind of an answer.
Okay, thanks. Makes sense.
So maybe just to add there, Marco, if I look at the business architecture where the business strategy sits, they would have like the value proposition and the capabilities and then the information concepts that are required to do that, which gives you your set of nouns. And there you would start in terms of listing the facts around those nouns with respect to the value or the capability that you're working in.
Yeah, definitely. But even on upper management, having them to write what they're actually talking about in fact statements is, even at that level, even far away from IT, is very functional.
Okay. Yeah.
I've seen strategic management make wonderful papers and guidelines, but they're not connecting.
Sure.
So even there, and then being able to connect those requirements to nouns and meaningful concepts, and being able to link that to systems that actually have the data, that is the process that simply needs to be done. And it's kind of it's the divide, it's like the business and then we have IT, but it's really an ongoing line of communication and definitions.
Right. Thank you.
And I think I
know,
talk about
Adam,
that. I think I talk about that in the book, that it doesn't stop. It moves on.
Yeah. I need to leave, but I know that Debbie will hang around a bit. Thanks, Marco. Thanks, everybody. Adam, thank you very much.
Good luck. Talk to you later.
Cheers. Bye.
It's out.
Thank you.
Hey, it was just to say thank you very much. And having read the book, it was really nice to see you going through it as a live demonstration. It brings it all home, exactly what saying in the book, and the fact that you can write those statements and more or less just drop them in as a starting point and go from there with all the annotations and metadata is really nice.
Well, thank you. It's just, I wanted to show it live instead of just people going through pages, because it really works like that. It's just amazing. But thank you.
Yeah, it'll be time to have a play with it now.
Debbie,
are you doing the moderation?
I am indeed. I'm going to check the chat now. Christaline asked, how can I get access to your book?
I think if you just go to kstop.com, you will get a link to move on to the publisher environment where you can actually order the book.
Yeah. I also know on Technics Pub.
Yeah, that's the same one. Yeah, it ends up there.
You know, you are part of the top sellers for one of the months. I don't know. So you were quite front and forward whenever you go on Technics Pub. Check now.
Let's see if I can find a link to that quickly and paste it in the chat. Would that help?
There she is.
Yeah, and I didn't get the time, but with every information element, you can add your custom metadata, whether whether that is reference data to online web pages, or documenting who was the stakeholder, or who interviewed it, or who approved. All of that metadata can be configured. When generating database scripts, for instance, it not only builds the normalized database tables that I've shown you, but it also adds a layer of database views on top of that, so that if those views would be queried, the end user would actually see their own verbiage back, substituted with the data of the records in the table. So there's a full circle from getting the interview up and running to the artifact and the use of application and databases. And I keep talking about databases, but there's a lot of people doing Python or APIs or XML, or all of that comes out of the tool, and it generates as much as it has documented and captured with it. I still haven't found. Oh, now it finally, the book comes through.
I have posted it in the.
Oh, you did.
Chat.
Okay, so
yes.
stop looking for that one. Thank you.
No stress. Do we have any other questions?
Well, in case you want to play with it, there's evaluation editions. We have a free book edition that you can download. It is limited in functions and in size, but you can still work with the cases that are described in various books. And that's totally free for you to use. I'll be doing more presentations in Data Modeling Zone in Phoenix next year. And that's about it, what I have on my calendar for now.
Amazing. I'm sure we'll book you again as well. Naresh, do you have a chat? I see a question. I see you've just, your mic is on, so I don't know if you have a question.